Beneath the centuries-old spires of Oxford, tucked away in the hallowed silence of the Bodleian library, lies a manuscript that whispers a story long forgotten. It's a codex, written in faded Syriac by monks who believed their ink would outlast empires. For decades, it was lost in plain sight, a forgotten fragment in a dusty drawer, cataloged as miscellaneous, and dismissed by generations of scholars. But this wasn't just any old parchment. This was a story that waited patiently for the right moment to be told. The manuscript begins not with a grand revelation, but with a missing page, a gap between the Gospels we know. It speaks of a teacher who laughed, a woman who dared to question, and a message of radical tenderness that was seemingly erased from history. Paleographers traced its journey back to a 5th century monastery near Edessa. From there, it traveled through the grand city of Constantinople, survived the iconoclast purges, and somehow found its way to an English collection before the Reformation. Its official acquisition note simply reads, "A very old book of uncertain content." It was a ghost in the archives, a puzzle of language and ink. Then, in the early 21st century, technology gave the past a new voice. Digital restoration and infrared scanners illuminated what time and humidity had tried to hide. Letters, once erased, flared back to life. Phrases that had been invisible for centuries appeared on the screen, speaking of a blessing for those who carry light into silence. Suddenly, this forgotten fragment sent a tremor through the spine of certainty. Chemical analysis revealed its cosmopolitan past. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and soot from Middle Eastern labs. This wasn't just a book, it was a world traveler, a survivor. What truly astonished researchers was a recurring symbol drawn where the cross would normally be, a small spiral enclosed by 2 intersecting lines. And then there were the words themselves, describing a gathering after the crucifixion. The disciples ask what remains when faith is stripped away, and the unnamed teacher answers, "The light that does not burn." Each line trembled between history and metaphor, like a heartbeat trapped in dust. This wasn't the first time the text had caused a stir. Back in the 1800s, a Victorian cataloger briefly mentioned a gospel of laughter before striking the entry from the record. His handwritten note in the margin was chillingly simple: "Dangerous to the devout." After that, the document fell silent again, its existence a whispered legend among a few cautious academics and archivists. When modern digitization finally reached the library's oldest vaults, the gospel returned to view, pixel by pixel. And what unsettled the curators was not blasphemy, but its profound beauty. It spoke of a compassion that knew no creed, of a kingdom found within all who look with mercy. The discovery ignited a firestorm of controversy. Church historians labeled it heresy. Linguists called it poetry. Skeptics dismissed it as a coincidence. But in the quiet of the archive, the parchment continued to breathe. As scholars pored over its digital facsimile, they found more secrets hidden in the margins, faint notes in Latin, added centuries later, translated key phrases. Asterisk magister risus, the teacher who laughed. And asterisk lux quieta. Asterisk, the quiet light. Someone, perhaps a Renaissance scholar or a Reformation exile, had studied this text in secret, leaving clues small enough to escape the censors of their time. The manuscript's journey is a mirror of humanity's own quest for meaning. We found a watermark from a Venetian merchant dated 1492, suggesting it crossed the same seas as explorers searching for new worlds. We pieced together its survival through shipping manifests and estate ledgers. A trunk of Oriental books purchased in London in 1609. The same trunk sold at auction in 1654. Then, it vanished for 2 centuries, somewhere between plague and revolution. A monk's quiet words slipped into the heart of a modern empire. Today, in the reading rooms above the vaults, researchers scroll through its pages on glowing screens. The flick of a finger replaces the trembling turn of parchment. The ancient ink, once invisible, now blooms in electric blue. Scholars see echoes of the Gospel of Thomas, the poetry of Sufi mystics, and even Stoic philosophy. Yet it aligns with none of them perfectly. Its rhythm feels older than doctrine, more intimate than ritual. One translated passage from 2018 reads, "Blessed are those who tend the wound they do not see." Another offers a stark warning: do not build temples of certainty, for God walks outside their walls. It's easy to see why no council could have endorsed these lines, why no hierarchy would have let them stand. And yet, here they are, preserved not by authority but by accident, the kind of miraculous survival that only chance, or perhaps providence, allows. The discovery forces us to ask a fundamental question. What defines Scripture? If a gospel speaks of love without demanding belief in miracles, if it finds divinity within human doubt, does it belong beside the canonical texts, or is it destined to remain an echo forever exiled? In conference halls and quiet offices, professors now argue under the watchful portraits of bishops who once burned books for far less. Outside, tourists cross Radcliffe Square, blissfully unaware that beneath their feet, the past is whispering through climate-controlled silence. The very architecture of Oxford seems to guard this paradox, a place built to preserve truth, sometimes by hiding it. Even today, accessing the Bodleian's restricted section requires 3 signatures and 2 keys, a ritual as old as the secrets it protects. At night, when the lights dim, the lost gospel rests beneath glass, reflecting the faint blue glow of security ledi's a modern halo around ancient ink. Late-working conservators sometimes swear the motion sensors trigger without cause, as if the page itself still resists being silenced. Theological institutions from around the world have requested access, but permission is granted sparingly. Each visit generates more interpretations, yet less certainty. Some read a proto-feminist voice in its lines. Others see an early mystic satire of rigid doctrine. No one can agree on who wrote it, but they all sense a powerful intention, a consciousness that wrote for hearts centuries beyond its own. 2 filmmakers and novelists. The manuscript has become a myth. To the curators, it's a liability. And to some of the faithful, it is a temptation. But its power endures, precisely because it refuses to be pinned down. Every generation must decide what it means to them. For the Victorians, it was scandal. For modern scholars, it's a breakthrough. For us, perhaps, it is a mirror. The most recent infrared scans have revealed something even more profound. Minute fingerprints embedded in the ancient suit, possibly belonging to the very monk who copied 1500 years ago. It's a tangible bridge of human touch, a direct connection to a person of deep and trembling devotion. In those smudges, you can almost imagine the flickering candlelight, the tired eyes, the quiet reverence, and in the silence that follows each new translation, you can almost hear the echo of that ancient laughter, the teacher who refused solemnity, who dared to suggest that holiness might be found not in suffering, but in joy. This lost gospel of Oxford is less a heresy and more a conversation across time. It's a question posed by the distant past to a world that still fears unanswered questions. In its fragile pages, history and faith hold hands like strangers meeting after a long time apart. Perhaps it will one day be published for all to see, or perhaps it will remain in its climate-controlled case, illuminated only by the light of human curiosity. Either way, it has already fulfilled its purpose. It reminds us that the truest faith isn't found in having all the answers, but in the courage to keep wondering. And as the library settles into its nightly quiet, the manuscript waits, patient as truth itself, for the next century to listen. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we know. Until next time, stay curious.